pretty big basketball family. Like my dad, he's in like all the Iowa Hall of Fame. My oldest brother, he had a great basketball career, played 10 years professionally, had some kind of little sniffs with the NBA. Like having the last name Sir meant a lot. And there was a lot of pressure and expectation that, well, if you're his son and this guy's brother, you need to be this. And if you weren't, which I wasn't, you would get ridiculed relentlessly for it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. Today we have the wonderful Henry Sir. He is a comedian located back up in Canada, but also goes down to Los Angeles. However, today he's got really open, talking about the pressures he had self-imposed and outwards regarding being a legacy basketball kid. So how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
Man, I can't describe the taste of anything, but if I was to describe the taste of a banana, I would say oh my god, it's got a bit of a weird texture depending when you eat it. It can be a little mushy, it can be a little grainy at times. The taste itself though is, oh my gosh, I don't know if I've ever had a plantain, but it's like a plantain.
Well, plantains are sweeter. If you've never had a plantain, how can you say it's like it?
I don't know. How does one describe a banana? I don't know how to describe anything. If someone was to describe water, I taste like water. A banana tastes like a banana. I don't know. It's a very distinct flavor that's very banana-y. You taste other things that taste banana-y, and that's how you describe that taste. So to describe the banana taste one step further, I have no idea.
But then would it be the same as if someone said, what does the meat taste? Tastes like chicken?
Oh yeah, totally. Exactly. It's, I don't know how to describe food. I don't have a sophisticated palate. I can't be like, I'm getting a hint of this and this and this, and you add it all up, and that's what comprises a banana. To me, it's just banana.
So a food taster or sommelier is not up your alley then?
No, I mean, I am such a simpleton in most ways, but definitely with food.
So how would you explain your first existential life crisis as a child?
Oh man. A lot of those in my day. I
Let's
think
go to the first one. Go to the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. The one I can think of the most is like a lot of kids growing up, you go to church and you hear the concept of like eternal life and everything like that. And I just remember, I don't remember how old I was, but being really kind of disturbed by that, of like lying in bed late at night and just wondering like, what does that mean? Like in eternal life, am I just going to be with my family? Like, is it going to be my parents and they're their age right now, and all my brothers and I were the same age, but then, you know, brothers, they move off and they get married, and are my parents, are they going to be like, are they going to want their parents, and at what point of life are their parents going to be? And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense, and it's just eternal, like it goes on forever and ever and ever. Do people age? What are like the relationships, all that kind of stuff? And it just really caused me a lot of anxiety. And I think I was about like probably like 5-ish when I started really getting in my head about that sort of thing.
And so it was 5 that you remember a particular sermon?
No, not a particular sermon. It's just grew up around like on my mom's side of the family.
You said,
You know,
mum.
yeah, well, we don't say mom, we say mum in Canada. We say mum. Um, on my mom's side of the family, people go to church. On my dad's side of the family in rural Iowa, a lot of churchgoers. So it was just around the church a lot. And, you know, you just hear about heaven and hell enough. Especially when you have a busy mind like I do and always have, you just think about it a lot. And I just remember it being a very, I don't know, just something about it really confused me and just made me feel very unsettled. I think that would be probably my first existential crisis.
So this was during daytime, this really sort of grabbed you, or would you say at night when you were trying to get to sleep as a kid?
At night, definitely at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, and then the busy mind really takes over, and I still don't do a great job of this, but especially at that point, I didn't know how to cope with this many thoughts constantly just bombarding you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, that's one of the aspects of the practice of meditation that we teach. It helps the brain scans that have been done is it activates the part of the brain that processes thoughts and emotions. And when kids are younger and they're sort of staring off into space, they're like actually processing. And we have a culture that squelches that. So I remember as a kid, I could never get to sleep at night either. Mom, I can't sleep. Can I have a glass of water? You know, and then can I come downstairs, watch the telly? And then that then becomes a habit. So you've got what the brain needs to do, and then you've got a habit, right? And so if there isn't a habit trained when one's younger to allow that process to go through in the daytime, then when we get older, then there's a search for a way to shut it up because it's been told you're not supposed to have it, rather than, you know, that old phrase, what we resist persists.
Right.
Got to get to sleep. And one can't. What do you do to help you get to sleep, knowing that this is a clean channel?
I've for a very long time, I've kind of had peaks and valleys with insomnia, and there will be stretches where I cannot sleep, and I'll go like weeks where I may be sleeping an hour or two a night, and it's one of those things where I just try and tell myself more and more, like, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, but the more I think about it, the less I can sleep, and then I don't know exactly what happens, but I kind of get a good night's rest, and then it's like a reminder to myself, oh, I am capable of sleeping, and a bit of that stress and pressure on myself goes off a little bit. When I'm doing a good job, which is not often enough, I try and practice meditation. I try to avoid some of the medications I've been prescribed because I just get too worried about getting hooked on them. But for me, it's exercise, being creative throughout the day so that I get a lot of the racing thoughts on my mind just out there, and they're not all just built up in my head. Like I said, try and practice meditation a little bit. And I won't lie, I'm not like, maybe I am. I'm not like a pothead, but THC, can I talk about this kind of thing? Is that fine?
No, not at all.
Really?
Not
Oh God.
No. Well, you know, everyone can do whatever they want to do in life. That's absolutely fine. But you know, we'll just call that a medication, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. 100%.
As long as it's used as a medication.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. That the busy mind, right, as you said, the activity hasn't processed through in the day. So the creativity, right, which is the right side of the brain, which is probably now the opposite on the screen to everyone looking at it, like, what is she pointing to her left? The right side of the brain, right, that runs the left side of the body, has that creative space. And so when they've done MRIs of people meditating, what's fascinating is there's more equanimity than in the activity of the left and the right brain.
Interesting.
And a lot of that is because of conditioning of what one is supposed to be doing and what one has not done, where you think one ought to be, right? These are actually natural progressions of a species surviving, right? But because it's so heavy on the left brain, when one starts to get to a place where the brain de-excites, naturally it starts to have more equanimity. And what we want is more equanimity in waking state, right? And so meditation does help with that. And over time, what happens is you start having imprint that in waking state that occurs as the way it did when one starts to meditate. And if someone's curious about what is this woman talking about? There is a free ebook called Vedic Meditation Stories. You'll see a weird sort of image behind me. That's on Amazon free if you have unlimited Prime right now. And it's the only publication that has true stories from people who learnt the practice from their truth. So it hasn't been edited, so you can hear their voice coming through. And each story is only about a page long. And these are people who never thought they would meditate. Right. And so they're simply talking about how it changed their lives. So you can find out what that is. And then if you do have to pay a few cents or pennies, that all goes to the non-profit as well. But I would say that with a busy mind, if you're not being physically active, so you're in Canada and it's blooming cold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's tough. It's tough, especially over the lockdown last year. We went through this cold snap, and it was horrible because it was truly like dangerous to go outside. You take the dog for a walk, and within 30 seconds the dog was giving you this look like, what are you doing to me? Let's go inside. And it just felt like you were
the dog was under COVID protest.
Yeah, it was crazy. And we got some stuff in our basement. We got a rowing machine and a punching bag just to blow off some steam. The other day I went and played a basketball game, a rec league basketball game. That was great. But that is something that's nice about being in LA. Any day of the year you can just go for a run outside, whereas here it's tough to stay physically active. And when you have a busy mind like I do, and that it can be very self-destructive, winters in Canada really make that a challenge for sure.
And so do you find that the insomnia stretches you've had have been more so during the cold seasons when you have not been able to be more physically active?
Yeah, I think they definitely line up with those more consistently, but there can also be a stretch in the summer where if I have 3 nights in a row of a bad sleep, and even though I'm telling myself like, do not put the pressure on yourself, do not put the pressure on yourself, I'm putting so much pressure on myself, and I just can't sleep for weeks. And then just like that, out of nowhere, all of a sudden I'm sleeping fine again. But that's just one of the many handful of battles with myself I have in a bunch of different regards that seem to always come down to not putting so much pressure on myself and overthinking everything. But I still, I'm 33 now, and it's been a 21-year long thing of struggling with mental illness in a few different ways, and I've improved in a lot of ways, but I'm still like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't figure this out for the life of me.
Do you think that some of this pressure you had on yourself, if we want to go back to that first existential life crisis, most people think of the idea of eternal life like, woohoo, I live forever, I can do whatever I want, blah, blah, blah. And yours came across as, well, does that mean like everyone from the beginning of time? I meet everyone? Where do they fit in? That doesn't make sense, the questioning. And did you ever actually question it in church?
It's a weird thing. Not really, because I don't go to church. I'm not religious, but I've also never been able to bring myself to say I'm an atheist. I would say I'm agnostic, even though I'm much closer to not believing in anything than I am to believing in something. But of course, I think like a lot of people, I would like to believe in something. I would like to think that there is more out there, but this is all stuff I've really suppressed within myself. And I think it comes from a respect of family who has, religion and spirituality means a lot to so much of my family. And I'd feel rude to just be like, no, none of that's true. And there also is like a fear of God thing I have where I'm just like afraid to be like, oh yeah, I'm an atheist. So that makes me think like, well, if I'm afraid, I can't fully say I'm an atheist. So that was kind of a long-winded, rambly way of saying no, I have not. I've questioned it all to myself. I've just never been very open about being vocal about it.
So the Would you say that it takes you a while to make a decision in life?
Oh my God, yes. I'm the least decisive person you'll ever meet, and it's the worst. I am so annoying to everyone and myself with how indecisive I am. It's brutal.
And that's because,
I suck. No, I mean, I don't know. What you tell me. It seems like you know.
no, I'm asking you, is it
I think
probably,
it comes from a lack of confidence that I something I've tried to sort this out myself and with professional help of therapists and psychologists and whatever, that I have my core values and the things that I believe in, the things that I want to do, and then I have the side of me that's like dictated by depression and anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder and all the clinical stuff, like the not like, oh, I'm so OCD nonsense. um and that is constantly at odds with what I think are my real core values, but it's all based out of fear and anxiety and all that bad stuff. But it's like this constant war, and it gets to a point where I don't even really know which one's which. I don't know which one's the self-sabotage and which one is the me actually looking out for my best interests. So I have a very, very difficult time coming up with decisions because I have so much anxiety that every decision I make is the wrong one.
mm, mm. Do you have a moment you remember when you were little that you made a decision and the repercussions were not good?
I mean, little just dumb things a little schmucky kid that's the youngest of four boys would do, that where my parents are like, what is your problem? But nothing crazy. Like I would act out and just do obnoxious things, and they'd have repercussions in the sense of like, you can't say that to an adult kind of thing or whatever. But there was never any wow, that like you can't hit the reset button here. It felt like it did in my head. I constantly throughout my life have felt like, oh my God, what have I done? And then I take a step back and everyone's like, it's not a big deal. So in my mind, that happens all the time. But in reality, no, I don't think I've ever really done anything like that.
Have you felt that these rules that you talk about, wanting to be polite to your family, or how to behave in society, have actually helped you or hindered you?
I would say a little bit of both, or a lot of both actually. I definitely grew up in a house where manners was a very top priority, and I'm appreciative of that. I think I had good people show me how to be a kind, thoughtful person, and I would like to think that I am that. I really believe in kindness, and one of the few things that I sometimes get satisfaction from myself is that I think I'm a genuinely kind person, that it's not from like an ulterior motive. I just believe in kindness, and I think I get that from my parents. Um, but I think it has also hindered me in the sense of there's so many societal pressures that I never agreed with and really wanted to stray away from, but I never had the confidence to do that. So I'd kind of toe the line. And looking back, I would think like that didn't do me any good, or it didn't do me nearly as much good as I thought it did. Like, for example, I played basketball through college, and basketball was kind of like life to me.
Mm,
And for a lot of reasons, it felt like it had to be. And I look back now, and I'm like, basketball, I enjoy it. And in my own weird way, I love it. But I also kind of hate it because it caused me so much more stress and frustration than it did joy. And to
mm.
think the amount of effort and obsession and thought I put into this thing, it just truly, looking back on it, I don't think that was worth it. So I would say things like that have hindered me a little.
So I think we're addressing self-imposed stress, right?
Oh
Self-imposed
yeah.
stress. So with basketball, right? So we can pick any topic, I think, which really reflects one's consciousness of how one approaches anything that gets overstressed, right? So with the basketball, when you were younger, what were the self-imposed stressors that made it so hard for you?
Well, I just come from a like a pretty big basketball family. Like my dad, he's in like all the Iowa Hall of Fames and his college Hall of Fame. He played professionally, was the player of the year. My oldest brother, he had a great basketball career, played 10 years professionally, had some kind of little sniffs with the NBA a little bit. And my like the having the last name Sir, where I grew up in our little basketball world, meant a lot. And there was a lot of pressure and expectation that, well, if you're his son and this guy's brother, you need to be this. And if you weren't, which I wasn't, you would get ridiculed relentlessly for it.
So
And
you were a part of a legacy then.
yeah, and looking back on it, like there was pressure, but it's tough when you're a teenager to separate the pressure from like, well, that doesn't matter. That's just arbitrary nonsense. At the time, it felt as real and concrete as anything could be. So
Usually this
definitely,
is, yeah, I'm just, usually this is very strong with the elder kid, but you were the youngest.
yeah.
Why was it still so strong for the youngest?
Well, I think I'm a very anxious person, so a lot of it was self-imposed stress. There was pressure, like I said, but there probably was not as much pressure as I placed on myself. And like I said, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. So when I get obsessed, I can be obsessed with a bunch of things at the same time, but there's kind of always been the one primary obsession that I've tried to channel for good. And oftentimes it isn't. And at times that was basketball. It's right now, honestly, for as long as I've been doing it, it's been comedy too, in a lot of ways. But at that point, yeah, I was much more interested in like artsy stuff and drama. But especially when you come up in a blue collar place like Alberta, where I'm from, men don't do creative things. Real men play sports. And I tried to resist my inclinations for music. I was way more interested in being a drummer in a band than I was in being a basketball player, but I did not have the confidence to say that what you're supposed to do is play basketball. So I played basketball, and I put so much stress on myself for it.
And your elder siblings, were they all very good at it?
My oldest was my the second oldest. He didn't play uh that long. The brother just above me, we actually played college basketball with each other. He was very good, but in his own way, he didn't have the. It's a weird thing because I don't have a great deal of confidence, but in the weirdest scenarios I did, even though with all this stress, I was pretty good. And when I played, I felt very confident. Whereas so there's Steve, Ben, Sam, and Sam was good. He just never really asserted himself like certainly my oldest brother did, or even I did.
And what was the you said there was some pressure from your dad, your family. Was there more pressure from outside or from inside the household about it?
I perceived there to be a lot of pressure from the outside. Whether there actually was or not, I don't know. Like when I was in high school, this is right when message boards online started. So I would just shouldn't have, but would go on and look at them, and there would be all these things. Like me and my other brother, who I played high school and college with, would just be talking about how much we suck, insulting us so much because we're not my oldest brother. So I felt that kind of pressure. Just having the last name I did, I felt pressure again. Whether that was as real as I thought, I don't know. And there definitely was pressure in my household, but also it probably wasn't as severe as I felt it was.
Right. And this is what we can only ever deal with is our own perception of
Exactly.
ourselves, right? So these are, perception shifts that we have as we get older.
Mhm.
What were you self-editing away from music and the arts? Or was there ever a conversation about, don't think you need to do that?
I there was never really a conversation. I just again felt pressure of you get made fun of enough. It's kind of like if you are doing any of that creative stuff, it's like you're soft. Whereas real
Yourself.
men play sports, and I didn't want to be soft. So I was very, I would write poetry, I would write songs I'd have all these songs written in my head, and something to this day, like now I just embrace, but I really love music. I love, like you can see back here, I love playing different instruments, teaching myself instruments, and just writing songs just because it's such a great creative outlet. Then I would do the same thing, wouldn't dare tell anybody. Even when I played in a band, I'd play the drums, I would never show the music I wrote to any of them because I was embarrassed. Because
Mm.
it was so ingrained to me, you're soft if you're into that sort of thing. And yeah, I stopped taking drama class. I was asked to be in a play in junior high and self-sabotage my way out of that one because it's soft. So there was some legitimate, oh, I want to be a musician. It's like, okay, you're a loser, that sort of thing. But there was never like a sit down, like, hey man, you need to stop with this creative nonsense and stick to basketball because that's where the real money's at, kind of thing. There was never anything like that.
Do you think that it was you seeing what could be coming down the line and protecting yourself to keeping this close to the vest, as it were?
I don't think so. I think I was just a very confused. It's like I overthink so much that eventually I become kind of thoughtless,
Right.
if that makes sense. Like I have so much going on in my head that I might as well have nothing going on. And I think I'm so observant. I'm observing every little thing, but then the thing happening right in front of me, I don't know what's going on because I've completely spaced out. And I think it was more that I'm so in my head that I'm not present. I'm just so fixated and stressed about the past and so anxious about the future that I just lose sight of what's happening entirely.
Mm. You
Yeah.
always remember being anxious.
Yep, for sure. I was definitely not as so I remember being a little kid and I remember going to a movie theater and touching chewed gum under an armrest, and I think that's the first panic attack I ever had, and I kind of had this germaphobe thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember really freaking out, and I would wash my hands a lot, and like I was kind of that kid who always had super dry hands that were always cut up and everything just because I washed them so much. And then, but I was a pretty happy kid though. I just was a little neurotic.
Mm.
And then my family moved to the States when I was 12, and people move every day. I still don't fully understand why it was as big a deal as it was, but it just went horribly. And it's like a switch went off, and I went from being a bit of an anxious, neurotic kid to I just had debilitating clinical depression, OCD really, really took control of my life. And there were some other things going on. So long, short answer, yes, I have always been an anxious person, but there was kind of that thing that hit the switch that went and made it sort of a lifelong battle, if you will.
Mm. Mm. Your self remedies are the exercise and getting quiet time, being as creative as possible. What had you move back to Canada then?
I mean, in all honesty, I'll talk about a bit, but like there's so much like family stuff in it that I'm like, out of respect to them, I don't want to divulge too much information, but like
Mhm.
I really, really struggled to the point of it. It was like my parents realized like we got to get back to Canada for his own
Ah.
sake.
Mm.
And so it kind of came this like slow, gradual process of my mom and I moved back, and then my oldest brother went off to college, so he was away. But then my dad and my two other brothers eventually came back to Edmonton, but we were apart from each other for a few years, and that caused a whole other bag of worms too, because I went back to being with the friends I was around growing up, but I kind of felt like an outsider now, and I used to be like one of the pack, whereas now I didn't feel like that anymore. And yeah, it's very much a time that it's interesting 21 years later how much it's defined me and played a role in me now. Is I'm a pretty introverted guy. I like socializing, I really do, but I feel like I kind of have to keep to myself. I'm pretty quiet, and yeah, it really shaped who I am, for better in some ways, but for worse in a lot of ways too.
And did you find when you went back, how old were you when you moved to America
I was
initially?
12 when we moved, and then I
Oh,
was just 13 when we moved back. It was only a
oh,
1 year thing. It just went
okay.
so, that 1 year just went so poorly. Yeah.
That's your year. Other people, it was 2020.
Yeah, I was way ahead of the game. I was way ahead of my time, having horrible years.
So, okay, so it wasn't a move away and you were escaping the legacy kid. You were actually then came back to it again. And now
Yeah.
I would imagine there was even more anxiety of, oh, we came back because of Henry.
Yeah, I definitely felt a lot of guilt over that. It's interesting how something as simple as a family moving, which, like I said, families do every day, how the ripple effects of that cause so much strife and anxiety and sadness and feelings of regret, for sure.
And if you were to go back and have a little chat with yourself, either around 5, let's start with 5, when you're sort of
Mm.
having all these thoughts, what would you possibly say to maybe help the little fella?
I bet I would say what 30 years from now I would say to me in this moment of, relax. It's okay, man. Like, just chill out, let yourself enjoy things, let yourself have fun. Not everything is that big of a deal. Most things aren't that big of a deal at all. So just calm down. I think that's what I'd say.
Calm down, calm down. All right,
Yeah.
yes, all right, whatever words work well. And then the same thing with 13 coming back to Canada. It's
Yeah.
no big deal. Everybody moves all the time.
Yeah. I'd again just try and say, just get out of your head. Just get out of your head, because all of these things that are driving you up the wall, none of it's real. It's not to say you shouldn't have these kind of feelings, but kind of what I've tried and not really succeeded, if I'm being honest, but through some meditation that I've done, is just accept the thoughts come, and that's all they are. They're just thoughts, and let them pass and move on with your life.
Thoughts is fascinating because there is this idea of when someone meditates, you don't have any thoughts. And the scientifically, if we look at people who had NDEs, right, near death experiences, officially died and came back, they'll talk about thoughts and awareness. So it's actually not a body dependent phenomenon.
Mm.
So the idea of having no thoughts is actually a crazy goal.
Yeah, that's wild. And I get it though, because when your mind is like, I keep saying it, I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but truly it's like kind of my biggest issue. It not kind of, it is my biggest issue of, it's just nonstop, incessant, going a million miles an hour in a million different directions thoughts, that you sometimes think like, boy, would that be sweet to just have a lobotomy. But at the same
Right.
time, and yeah, and that's what's intimidating about meditation, is like, the last thing I want to do is sit there in silence with my thoughts. But when I have been diligent about doing it, and it's been great, again, to that point of understanding, no, I'm not supposed to not think. I just have a healthier approach to what these thoughts actually are, you know?
Right. And the biggest reason why there are thoughts, leaf blower right now. The biggest reason is it's stress. So when we are at the effect of stress, we go into fight or flight, and it's very natural to try to solve a problem, right? So the mind is attempting to solve a problem initially for the survival of us as a species. But what happens is when there's trauma and it's built up, say you have a nervous disposition anyway, it becomes a habit. And then there's a habit of having a habit of being stressed. So if someone tries to become calm, then there's stress about trying to become calm, right?
Yeah.
So now there's that habit. We have to have that habit. Whereas if we do simply surrender to the process, and in the technique we have a sound that has no meaning that brings you inward. It's sort of like an anchor to just, right. And you sort of get to that place in spite of oneself. And that was my experience, because I had so many thoughts when I did the first meditation at home on my own. I lay down and thought, oh, I really need a drink now. This is just awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the time, I would sleep every afternoon because I couldn't sleep at night.
Mm.
And I lay down for my regular 3-hour nap. And within about 5 minutes, I sat up because it was clear my body didn't need it. And it took someone else to say, wait, what? You don't have to sleep for 3 hours because you sat down, even though you had lots of thoughts, for 20 minutes twice in one day. And it was that moment that I realized, oh, it doesn't matter what I think. This isn't a concentration practice. It's not a manifesting practice. It's not about what's on the surface. It's about letting all the bottom of the pond get cleaned out. So then the surface looks clear.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're all attempting to get that. But most Westerners, most, not all, the concentration practice is going from this part of the mind, right? The active state. If we're actively trying to be calm, all we're doing is being more busy.
Yeah.
We're not going in unless someone has something like hypnosis or something to distract the mind away. Rather than going in, get the body the deep rest it needs, which is why the adrenals are up anyway, because the body recognizes, I haven't been sleeping. I'm not getting the rest I need. We need to do something to keep going in the day, which then, you know, with the insomnia issue you're fully aware of, until the body finally takes over.
Yeah.
Right. And so the busy mind and active creative mind is simply at the effect of stress. And so when one is more stressed, there's going to be a busier mind.
Yeah.
And even if someone's been meditating for 20 years as a householder, which is the best word I can really think of, because it doesn't matter if you work at McDonald's, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO, you still deal with people,
Yeah.
expectations, your upbringing. And most of the practices that we look to are individuals who have given that up and dedicating their lives to that. You don't think, but people think delusionary, oh, I'm going to go to a monastery and I'm not going to have any worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. You're going to worry about who's going to take that one blanket from you, what shift you got, are you cooking the same food again? You know, are you appearing quiet but having millions of thoughts? It's the same. It's the human condition.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one can't, like you have shared, manage the surrender. Right.
Right. Yeah, it's
And
hard.
It's entering. It's what all actors are trying to do. Get in the moment.
Yeah.
Or stand-up comedians, find it. Are you in it with the audience? Is it there? It was. How do I get it back? It's gone. It's gone. Like that in the moment. That's the connection to source. That's flying free. That's being connected. That's what we're all looking for, right? And in meditation, if we find a practice that works for us, and this one did for me because I have a busy mind, that allowed the body, first of all, to get that deep rest. When the body is rested, the mind doesn't have to work as hard.
Right.
Right? Because it's not at the effect of so much stress. And then it can begin to come back online. And then we can deal with all the old programming, which is there to protect us. That's what it's really there, but we don't need it now because we kind of grew up.
Yeah.
Right? Like it doesn't matter if you believe or you don't believe, whatever. And why is it, not able to make a decision? Right? Or just know, I'm not going to be able to make a decision in this, and that's okay. And then one day you'll start making more decisions because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I know it's the weirdest thing that's such a comforting thought of like none of this matters. Because it should be upsetting, and maybe in some ways it kind of is, but it's when I hope to get to that point of it just being a liberating thing, and I have little glimpses of feeling that way, but so often, the stress and anxiety I impose on myself, it's just it's so much. But I do, and this is progress, is I do believe, and I've felt it, and I just need to get back to it, is with work it can improve a lot. It's never not going to be an issue, but it can be much more manageable than it is when I'm out of practice and not doing all the things I know I should do. I'm just sabotaging myself, so it's an ongoing struggle.
Absolutely. The great freedom within that is the world is a big place. There's billions of people. There's this idea of the eternals. I'm here to do something. Might as well enjoy it in each moment while I'm here without causing harm to other individuals. Well, Henry, thank you so much for sharing with us and being part of our channel. We do hope that you will share his story with others. Click the share button, like and subscribe if you can, or click through to one of the other videos. That would be super, super helpful. And pop down in your chats any thoughts and comments you have. Perhaps you've experienced some similar issues or challenges as Henry did, so you won't feel so alone in the world. And if that matters to you.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us on Cosmic Chats.